Hi, I'm Shaul. A viewer of this channel named Louis or Louis asked three very good questions, which I would like to address in this video. The first question was, why can't I see any pop in my images? To answer that, we have to really look at the perception of depth, both in our daily life with our actual eyes, and what happens when we look at a two-dimensional representation of the world in an image, in a painting or in a photograph. There are many cues to the distance of an object from us. Those cues are transmitted from our eyes into our brains, and our brain recreates a 3D representation from this 2D image that is brought in by our vision system. Those visual cues can be segmented into three major groups. The first group is binocular information. You see, our eyes are spaced, and each eye has its own angle in which it looks at the world. That creates a binocular disparity, because both images recorded by each of our eyes is a little bit different. The closer an object is to us, the more disparity it will have in the images created by our both eyes. And the furthest away, the least disparity. If I look at something closer to me, the position of that object will really depend on which eye I look at it with. So our visual cortex, located at the backs of our brains, really creates a kind of a depth map to be able to interpret the location or the distance of each object we see, and create a 3D representation of the scene in front of our eyes. The second group of cues is physiological. When we look at something very close to us, our eyes converge. The pupils become closer together through movements of muscles inside our eyes. And that muscular activity is transferred to our brains too. And the brain interprets it as something close to us. Same goes for an effect called accommodation. When we look at something close, a muscle in our eyes contracts in order for us to focus on our closer distance. And when we look at something far away, those muscles relax. This effect is called accommodation, and it's also a major signal that is translated into depth information. The third group of cues is monocular. It's cues that do not demand two different images or muscle movements. It's actual visual cues that we can perceive with only one eye open. Those are motion parallax. When we move our head or something is in motion in the scene, the speed of motion is greater the closer that object is to us. So that is also an important, a powerful cue for estimating distance. Then there is scale. The size of an object as it appears on the retina is compared to the typical size of that same type of object, and that enables us estimating its distance. Another important cue is aerial perspective. The closest an object is to our eyes, the more detailed, contrasty, textured it appears. As we go further away, objects lose their detail, their contrast, and they appear more uniform, more washed out to our eyes. This is caused by dust or haze in the atmosphere. That linear perspective is another important cue. Lines that run parallel to the z-axis, the distance axis, seem to converge up to a vanishing point. That gives us a good clue of distance. And then there is occlusion, when the view of an object is obscured by another object. We can safely evaluate that the obscuring object is closer to us than the obscured object. So we can get a good idea of the relative distance of object, or which one is closer to us and which one is further away. But that doesn't give us a good evaluation of the absolute distance from us. Of course, when we look at an image, a two-dimensional representation of a scene, we lose some of this information. Everything that has to do with physiological and binocular cues is gone. We cannot use it to evaluate distance. Everything to do with motion, like motion parallax, is also gone because there is no movement in the scene. So we are left with a rather limited set of cues to work with, to perceive the three-dimensional nature of the scene depicted in that image. The more cues in an image, in a photograph, the more we can perceive its structure, its spatial nature. But it doesn't always work this way in photographs. For example, scale is not only dependent on distance, but also on the focal length at which we look at the scene. Long focal length will tend to create a compression effect. There will be a smaller difference in size between objects that are at different distances from us. On the other hand, a very wide field of view will exaggerate linear perspective, and it will fool us into thinking that objects are more removed from us than they really are. Even when the scene shows plenty of cues, a combination of linear perspective, aerial perspective, occlusion, a good scaling of objects, of familiar types of objects, we often cannot really perceive the structure, the three-dimensional depth, the scene in front of us. And to decipher the image, we need to go through a cognitive process. We do not immediately feel the depth of the scene. We need to analyze it further. So we are no longer talking about depth perception. We are talking about depth conception, which is a totally different thing. And it is much less impactful on the viewer when looking at an image. When looking at an image compared to looking at the world with our naked eyes, all the cues that get lost have to do with close subjects. So we can still perceive quite well objects that are further away, but we lose a lot of information in the close quarters. And this is where the texture, the shape of object, the curvature of surfaces come in as important cues in order to correctly interpret the shape of an object, the form of surfaces, the correct curvature, the volume and the weight of objects. we have to have a nuanced gradation of tonality, a sort of gradation that is natural to our vision. And that is possible only with certain lenses. Other lenses, especially what we would define as very detailed, very sharp and clinical lenses, have a tendency to create too much contrast. The gradation from shadow to highlight they present is very steep, and it lacks the subtlety of nuance, and thus it fails to give us the compensation for the lost cues. But with other lenses, such as the lens filming me now, which is highly true to life in its nuanced tonal gradation, the perception of the shape, the volume, the weight of objects is easy. It is more of an automatic, natural process of understanding the image. Perhaps understanding is not a right term, but perceiving the image as it is without too much reliance on a cognitive process. Let me change the lens to a flat one, a lens that is much more modern than this one and is made for resolving the whole information from high resolution cameras. And let's see what happens to the image. I'm using a different lens now. The lens I used before was this one, the Thypoc 28mm f1.4, which is a lens made for rangefinder. It's small in size and it's rather poppy due to the use of a lot of dense glass, high refractive index glass that delays the passage of light and extracts a lot of nuance from the light. While now I'm using a zoom lens, the Tamron 15 to 30 G2, which is one of the sharpest zooms, wide zooms ever made. But it contains a lot of low density glass, of low dispersion glass that makes the image sharper, but deprives the light of nuance. So I expect the image to look quite flatter than the full 3D image we looked at before. I don't know if my hypothesis that the type of glass in a lens is what affects its rendition, its character, or is it only the number of elements, or the number of groups or whatever. But the optics definitely affect the look of the image and our perception of depth from it. And this is quite predictable. I never tried to shoot video in these settings with this Tamron zoom. But I'm quite confident that the image it will produce would look quite flat, quite dead. Let's have a look at a few pairs of images. The first one in each set was made with a flat lens. And the second one was made with a more poppy lens, more dimensional lens. And you can see how the lens affects the look, the perception of depth in the image. Not all the images made with poppy lenses are poppy, because the actual effect of what we call 3D pop, of surfaces in the image jumping out of it, or seeming to jump out of the image. Not all those images are poppy, have true 3D pop, but they do offer a good perception of depth compared to images made by flat, clinical lenses that look quite dead. They're not really fit for photographing living things. Those images were not always made with the same camera, and they were sometimes taken a few years apart. But they have equivalent composition, so they should portray the scene in the same manner, if the optics did not matter. And again, the effect of the lens is quite predictable. Please let me know in the comments whether you saw a difference, or maybe you didn't. Now the thing is, not everyone sees this pop. I once made a survey, and only about 85 to 90% of the participants reported that they did see this effect. So our brains are wired a little bit differently, but still most of us can appreciate the immediate, the automatic perception of depth. And it is thus a desirable characteristic of images. We all want our images to look true to life, don't we? There are some compositional tools we can use in order to accentuate the depth in an image, in a scene. The first one is layering. When you have different layers in the image, you can use the principles of scale, of occlusion, and of aerial perspective to let the viewer realize where he is, what are the different distances of different objects from. In such layered scenes, you need a continuum of distance. You need something to connect one layer to the next one. So if you include the ground in the image, for example, or even better, a leading line that goes from the foreground to the background and offers some linear perspective, it really clarifies things for the brain to understand the scaling, the distances. Sidelight can give you a good nuance in the tonal gradations. It can accentuate the structure, the shape of objects. However, lighting rarely replaces a good dimensional lens. The optics still matter because they bind all the other cues and really give some required idea about surfaces and the shapes at the foreground. One more element that could really create some pop in the image is the inclusion of an irregular pattern in the background. Now, to understand why that matters, I will put a link to an earlier video I made. I would really suggest that you watch it in order to understand how 3D pop works, why we like it so much. Louis also asked two more questions, and they both have to do with the best settings to achieve 3D pop. Specifically, he asked about focal length and about the best aperture to accentuate the pop. Now those two factors are of course related. What we want in a good layered scene is that everything appears more or less sharp. It doesn't have to be hyperfocal, but there should be a good idea about what is photographed. So you can't go for a complete background blur where nothing is recognizable. A good rule of thumb would be to use a physical aperture that is between about 10 and 20 millimeters. So with a wide lens, say a 28 millimeter lens, that would be an aperture between 1.4 and 2.8. For a 35 millimeter lens, it would be something between f1.8 and f3.5. For a 50 millimeter lens, it would be something between f2.5 and f5. And for an 85mm lens, it would be something between f4 and f8. So it depends on the focal length, of course. What you want is everything in the photograph to look relatively sharp. You can have some selective focus in order to direct the viewer's eye to the subject, to give it some more sharpness and other elements at differing distances. But you can't really have too much blur, because that would reduce the distance from information. Wide angles are more conducive to dimensionality than telephotos. Enable you to include more context in the image, to really give the viewer a sense of placement, of more structure. Longer lenses have a compression effect that diminishes the differing scales, and they also tend to have a shallower depth of field. So you really need good light to close the aperture to a degree where everything in the scene is recognizable. On the other hand, wide lenses exaggerate linear perspective, so they make closer objects much larger than further away ones, and that really increases the perception of depth. I don't want to torture you anymore with this flat rendering lens, so let's go back to the Thypop, to the Poppy one, and stay with it until the end of this video. Then again, I cannot stress enough the importance of a good lens. A lens that binds all the other cues together and gives you proper contrast, a full contrast that is similar to the way we see the world with our eyes. Luis asked for a recommendation for a Poppy lens for Canon APS-C. Now, as you may know, I am quite reluctant to give specific recommendations, but I have looked at a Canon lens, a rather old one, that impressed me, that has a good Poppy rendition, and that is the humble Canon 28mm f1.8. It's a lens introduced 30 years ago and is still in production, I think, or it has been until not so long ago. It's not a big lens, it's not a very fancy lens, but looking at sample images, it really renders the world in a beautiful way. It pops where it should, and I can strongly recommend it, despite never using it before. On an APS-C body, it would create a focal length, an equivalent focal length of about 45 millimeter, which is quite versatile. It's very close to the natural perspective in which we look at the world. Right, I think that's enough for now. If you found this video interesting, please consider buying me a coffee. There's a link down in the description below. So thank you so much for watching, and see you again soon.